What's up, everyone? We are back, part 3 of Erik's renovation. So today is the fun part where we actually get to earn some sweat equity. I'm going to try my hardest not to, but I'll make sure to crack the whip on the rest of these guys so that way they feel awesome tomorrow when they wake up. A couple of things we want to address today is, number one, there's still weeds in the lawn, and that's perfectly okay. Number two, there's moss in the lawn, and so we'll talk about how we're going to deal with that and dispel some of the myths that exist about moss. And number three is, well, we're going to get some damn seed in the ground. So we had talked before about how we're going to handle this slope and all that fun stuff. Here's exactly how we're going to do it. We sprayed out everything, we're leaving the grass in place, and we're going to use a slit seeder. Now with the slit seeder, we're going to do a couple of different directions. But the advantage of using it is, with our parallel pass to the road here, it will actually help in rainfall for the seed to settle within the grooves and not run completely off the slope. And then the whole purpose of us leaving the grass instead of trying to scalp it away or till it, which is just ridiculous to begin with, is it provides a bit of another protective layer there. You'll also see that when we slit seed is that we're going to have a lot of debris, and we're going to leave a lot of that debris in place. Why, you ask? Because also it adds as another layer of protection. So hang on, let's go take a look at these weeds real quick, and then we'll talk about more of our course of action on how we'll handle those. Now, we still have a few weeds left in the yard. We got a little wild onion here, and we also still have some wild violets. We gave it our best. We gave it a couple sprays. It hasn't died. Guess what? Not worried about it at all. And the reason why is that these are actually going to be easier to kill with a product called triclopyr. Triclopyr has the highest level of efficacy against wild violets as far as a product we have access to. So once the grass is up and has a little bit of growth to it, and we get some cooler temperatures where it's a little bit safer to apply, we can go ahead and switch herbicides, use triclopyr, and be able to get adequate control of these moving into the winter. Same with the wild onions. We'll just go ahead and leave it for now. It's not going to interfere with the seed or the seed germination or the seed establishment. And so it may be a little bit unsightly, but we're not hurting anything. And since there's only one, we'll just rip it down and buy us a little bit of time before it even needs to be cut again. And we've got one piece of living Dallas grass left, so we'll just take the pieces that are green, get all the way down to the crown, and pull these out. It's not worth trying to make an application for a single weed that's sitting here. It's mostly dead anyway. We'll just get the crown out and call that good. All right, so with the moss, we now have moss to contend with. Here's one of the biggest myths about moss. Moss is an indicator of a pH issue. That is 100% not true. Moss can exist in low pH soils. Moss can exist in high pH soils. Moss is opportunistic. Where you lack turf density is where you will have the potential for moss to creep in. Shade can be a contributing factor. Percolation rates can be a contributing factor. But the reality is that once it's there, what's the best way to remedy it? Create a set of conditions that will be less favorable for the establishment of moss. How are we going to do that? Turf density. So before you go and buy a whole bunch of lime, before you go and buy a bunch of moss out, stop what you're doing. Don't do it. Don't spend the money on it. It's 100% not necessary. Instead, let's do something that's going to remove the moss the appropriate way, like run a slit seeder across it, and then get some good seed establishment. So if you've never worked with a slit seeder or a zip seeder, however you want to call it, down south some of us call them zip seeders, up north some people call them slit seeders. Pick your poison, it's all the same thing. Effectively, you've got a machine with an engine and a seed box, and there's a series of blades that exist underneath it. The blades are going to cut grooves into the soil, and effectively the seed box will drop seed behind it. I guess what's kind of nice about this is that we also have a little bit of a rate chart here. We're going to be seeding tall fescue, and we see that we can get down 4 pounds per thousand at a 15 1/4. Now, obviously, this being a renovation establishment, we need a lot more than 4 pounds per thousand. But if we make 2 passes, we know that would be 8 pounds per thousand, which is going to be pretty close to where we want to be. So for the time being, we'll probably set this at 15 and call it good. Alright, so what we're doing here, this is from Dickens Turf. We got some blacktail tall fescue, temple, and tough tall fescue. These are not my ideal seed choices for this scenario. However, due to the seed shortages we're facing right now, it's the only thing we can get. The most important thing is that we have 0 weed seeds, and though we have 0.04 other crop, which I am 100% not in favor of, it's the best we can do given the circumstances. With this year and the seed shortages we're facing, you got to take what you can get. This is what we can get. This is what we're going to go down with. Now, this is Erik's first time running a slit seeder, and this is what it looks like every time somebody runs a slit seeder for the first time. You can see we have grooves over here on this spot, and these grooves are definitely sufficient. However, if we see right here, especially in contrast over here, this area was missed. The most important part of slit seeding a yard is making sure you have tine to tine coverage, meaning that your tines between your rows are as tightly spaced as they are between the actual blades. It's difficult. There's nothing easy about this the first time you do it. Sometimes you may have to run the slit seeder 2-3 times even to feel comfortable passing it across your yard. If that is the case, don't freak out. There are plenty of pros out there who struggle with these machines, especially these cheaper rental machines like this. They are not easy equipment to run. So if it happens to you, don't get frustrated. Try running in a different direction. Try to slow down as much as you can. It's going to take a lot of effort. Even if it takes you 4 hours to slit seed a lawn, that's not abnormal. So we'll keep after it. All right, so we finished the front. That sucked, but it's over with, and now we're gonna move on to the back. The back is significantly smaller. We have just under 2,000 square feet back here, so should make for some okay, still not easy work, but a little bit to be done. Same different deal back here, a little bit of wide violets, no problem. We'll hit those with triclopyr as it cools off, but the main priority right now is just to get grass established and up, and then we can start dealing with the weeds. So round 2, here we go.
Always afraid of mangling shit.
Oh, no, you'll be alright. All right, what started out as a couple-hour project has wrapped up being an all-day project, but we finally got it done, including above-ground irrigation. Shout out to Ryan Orr for the help, being able to put this together. And we kind of ganked his idea, but we thought it was a perfect little fit for at least what we wanted to accomplish on an above-ground 4-zone system. So now from this point, we're going to be watering, real simple. 4 minutes at a time, 5 minutes at a time at 7 a.m., 11 a.m., 3 p.m., 7 p.m. And we're gonna run that until we're up, and then we'll start decreasing the water and freaking out the grass a little bit, starving it of water. So stick around, because coming up, we've got fertilizer, and from that point forward, it's gonna be just watching the damn thing grow in. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.